communication, and I need to be able to look at your face, and I can tell immediately whether or not it's going in. If I can't see your face, I'm not sure. I'm always scanning, I'm always checking out all the time to see whether or not you're assimilating or understanding these ideas. And if I can't see you, I can't help you. Because I will back up and reformulate the teaching if I see that somebody's not getting it. Because it's very nice to go together on this, for us all to stay together on the same wavelength here. It's going to be obviously difficult because there are some new people. We have a group, Vedanta appeals to the whole spectrum. And there are quite a number of people here, this is for your new people, who are self-realized people, enlightened people. They're not coming because they want to get enlightened, they're coming because they love Vedanta. So, and they pick up stuff also. Then there are new people who are not familiar with the teaching. There's something for everybody here, obviously. So this teaching is a complete teaching. It handles the people at the very top level of the scale, and it handles the entry-level people. And it will move you from entry level right on up to the top slowly if you understand what the teaching is. But it's difficult to communicate when you've got differences in understanding. So it's very important that the new people not get frustrated, because you're going to hear some. Even this text that we're doing, now, is a very advanced text. I generally don't teach this text. I teach part of it. I teach the easy part. Okay? But there's a lot of people now who've been into Vedanta for a long time who need to hear this, the hard bit, the final teaching, quote unquote. And so for you new people, if it's going over your head, don't worry about it. There's plenty of meat here anyway, and we're going to start slowly from the basic teaching anyway and work up. So, and I'll try to keep it slow and simple so that we can. The other people don't get frustrated when you hear the teachings you already know. You can never hear too much Vedanta. I read scripture and write scripture every day, several hours, sometimes more. It's really, the mind tends to get dull and lazy and stupid, and you need to keep it active and alert and aware, or this knowledge will desert you. At some point, it's impossible for it to desert you. But when you're beginning and in the intermediate stages, you need to hear it over and over and over again. And there's a tremendous beauty to this teaching. It is so sophisticated, so simple, so elegant, and complex at the same time, that there's just endless room for fascinating investigation. This teaching is thousands of years old. It's been elaborated without changing the basic idea. It's been developed and elaborated over thousands of years by great sages, great minds, serious minds, minds that would make Einstein's mind look tiny. Seriously. So there's you know there's really heavy-duty spiritual food for you here, and it works. That's why you're hearing it today. You're hearing it because it works. Most of these modern teachings, they'll come up, there'll be a lot of people interested. After 10, 20 years, you'll never hear of them again. They'll just disappear. They'll just won't even rate a minor footnote in the history of the spiritual world. Because they're not complete teachings. They're not eternal teachings. They have bits and pieces, most of which they've gathered from here, but these people that are teaching it have basically never been taught the whole thing. It's not their fault. They don't know that it's available. They're helpful. These modern teachings are helpful up to a point. They're also very frustrating and difficult because you don't have a complete science of existence. Understand? This is a science of existence. We don't have time to. Oh, we should turn that this one on, Mark. No, this switch that one on. Is it? Yeah, that's better. This is a complete science of existence, and we don't have time to investigate existence. I mean, when you know, how many of you actually have had time to think? I mean, most of you have wondered, what am I doing here? And what is this life all about? Everybody wonders that. Well, not everybody, but all you spiritual types. That's a question that's probably been with you from day one. Who am I and what am I doing here in this weird meat tube? In this amazing universe? What is it? But the actual, well, we're so busy pursuing stuff here in this world that we don't actually have time to investigate deeply what existence is and what my consciousness is. It's just so we pick up bits and pieces, cobble together bits and pieces, get tentative answers, sometimes correct answers, sometimes incorrect answers. We don't have any way to really evaluate whether what we hear or not is the truth, based upon our own personal experience. As a person, your ability to understand what you're experiencing, the existence that you are, and the existence that you see, and the consciousness that you are, and the consciousness that's working in you all the time, your ability to appreciate the value of that is extremely limited. That's just a fact. And so most people aren't privileged or honored to be exposed, to have their minds exposed to a means of knowledge that actually investigates existence / consciousness deeply, and in such a way that this great mandala, this great picture or mandala of existence has been unfolded and embellished in great depth and detail for thousands of years. We're just not available to us because we're too busy worrying about, security, pleasure, am I good enough, virtue. We have psychological problems that we're worried about. We have material problems that we're worried about. Those are taking all our time. And so this, and so we go to, we go to a satsang with whoever. I won't mention names, because I always get a lot of grief when I mention a name. But you go to these satsangs and you hear bits and pieces and they're arresting, it's interesting, but there's no background, there's no depth, there's no follow-up, there's no meat. It's like that Wendy's commercial, where's the beef? Remember that commercial? Where's the beef? There's no beef in these teachings. They've taken little bits and pieces and put a little clever relish on the top. But there's no meat there. And this teaching has got the beef. This is the beef. You are the beef, let's put it that way. So, you will naturally have questions. The teaching is set up in such a way that it provokes questions and it answers the question later. But there's always a gap between the question or the doubt that arises in your mind and the answer in the teaching. And that's because we have to fill in the supporting logic. We can tell you the answer, right? And you can believe the answer if you want to, but that's not going to work. Because this isn't a matter of faith, this is not religion. Okay? Don't get this confused with religion. We're all for religion, a certain kind of religion. But the religious attitude is not going to help you here when it comes to knowledge. Because blind faith is ignorance. That's why they call it blind. It's ignorance. And I need to what? We're thinking people. We have an intellect. You're always thinking. You need to satisfy your mind. Your intellect needs to be satisfied with understanding. And so we've got to slowly build up the logic between the question and the answer and lead you step by step from the question to the answer. Yeah. So there's going to be a gap. So just note your question, but suppress it. Please don't ask it in the... I'll just ignore you, basically. So this is not like these modern satsangs where a guy just walks up and doesn't know anything, and the teacher doesn't have a teaching, and they ask some kind of question out of the blue, and then the teacher tries to get that person feeling good or something, and everybody sits and listens, and then they think, oh, that's very wonderful. That person was crying when they came in, and now they're smiling, and so there must be some teaching there. But the fact is that all they did was just make you feel good and massage your emotions a little bit, and the person goes away dumb as a loaf of bread after they've heard the answer. This is very, very different, and very sophisticated, but simple, but very sophisticated teaching. We supply you step by step by step with the logic. Once you understand the logic, then you can apply that logic to any situation that happens in your life. You know, we're turning you into your own teacher. I don't need to teach anybody anything. I love this topic, and I've been doing it for almost 50 years, and I'm very good at it. I understand it, and I can communicate, but I don't need to do this. Understand? So you need to understand it if you want to be free. So we're very, very careful here to build step by step. If after a session or after a day or so, once we really, this is particularly for your new people, after you've heard enough, then you'll know what questions are appropriate. And if they haven't been answered, then we can deal with them in a question and answer session. Generally, you don't need much because the teaching is so simple and so clear. And if you're paying attention and actually just paying attention, then you're good to go. It doesn't mean you're not going to have to hear it over and over and over again, because ignorance is hardwired. Ignorance is not going to go away just because you have some big epiphany, some enlightenment experience. You think, and you go home, oh, I'm enlightened, and you hang out a shingle and get on the internet and start giving, satsangs and transmitting energy and all this sort of thing. It doesn't work like that. Ignorance is very clever. It bides its time. It comes back and grabs you, and ignorance is highly intelligent. And so you got you have to stick with this. And so this teaching that we're doing today, and later on maybe we'll get to the fourth chapter. The fourth chapter, that's called the first teachings. First three chapters are called Shravana. Shravana means listening or hearing. The last chapter is called Manana. Manana is resolving doubts. But you can't resolve your doubts about what you've heard unless you've heard it. Right? You've got to assume, now this is hard, I understand. You've got to assume that if you don't understand it, you're wrong. Don't try to attack the teaching. If you want to fight with the teaching, make a special appointment with me, and I'll take the position of the teaching, and I'll just wipe you out. I'm sorry. You cannot argue with this. The logic is impeccable. When you hear it, you'll surrender. You realize, oh, I could not possibly work this out. This teaching, it looks very simple, just three little circles and a bunch of arrows. You tell me after you heard this teaching if you would have ever thought of this, okay? If this idea would have ever occurred to you in your life. And the answer is no, it wouldn't. It needs to be taught. And so, teaching means you've got to listen. Now, what's the obstacle to listening? Why is it so difficult to listen? Because I have preconceived notions. I have ideas about who I am, about what the world is. That's the only two things you can have ideas about. Who I am and what the world is. The subject, me, consciousness, and to the world, which means the objects that present themselves to me. This is a basic definition. Every experience of every person is the same. It's absolutely the same. I'm a conscious being, aware, conscious, and I am what? Experiencing objects all the time. Objects doesn't just mean physical objects. Okay? An object is not just a physical object. That's how normal people think of objects. They think, oh yeah, that's an object, I understand that. Do you think that your feelings are objects? Well, when you think about it now in this context, yes, that could be an object, couldn't it? But when a feeling is coming up, do you think that's an object, like a table? Do you have the same relationship to your feeling that you do to the table? Huh? No, you don't. That somehow the feelings are much more personal than the table, right? Why is that? It's just an object. The feeling's just an object. Isn't it? Feelings can't talk. Can they talk? Your feelings talk back to you? No. Do the feelings know that you're aware of your feelings? No. Your feelings are totally stupid. They're as stupid as this. They're objects. thoughts, objects. Anything that you experience is an object, and what? It's different from you, the subject.
We think our feelings are us, though.
Yeah, that's right. That's, the subject, consciousness, has jumped over and identified with a feeling. There's no connection between you, consciousness, and your feelings and your thoughts. There's no connection. Just like, what do you feel about this table? Would you like to, everybody like to tell me their feelings about this table? You know what the feelings are going to be? They're all going to be the same feeling. Who cares about a table? You don't care about a table. You don't care about the cement here. You don't care about the carpet. But suddenly that object is a zippy little thought that goes through, a feeling that goes through my heart here, and suddenly that becomes a big deal. Yet there's absolutely no difference between a feeling and a material object. Your feelings are just material objects. They're just zippy little things that move. Feelings go kind of slow, but thoughts go very quick. Feelings go a little like this, and material objects are like, they don't change much at all, you know. But just because an object changes doesn't mean it's any different from any other object. And it doesn't mean that it's real. So we have this basic relationship between, you know, there's this fundamental relationship. This is why I can teach all you people at once, because I'm talking to the consciousness in you. This teaching is aimed at the consciousness in you, the conscious part of you, not at the physical part of you. I'm not addressing you as a physical, emotional, or intellectual beings. I'm addressing you as a conscious being. Now that's not generally how I think of myself at all, is it? I don't think of myself as a simple, awareful, conscious being. So I've picked up all these notions, these ideas, and these ideas pop into my mind when I'm hearing this teaching. And it sets up a problem. And I stop listening. That's the problem. I haven't developed the ability to put my ideas on the shelf for an hour or half an hour. A proper meditator, proper Vedanta inquirer, can set his or her ideas on the shelf for half an hour. I got so good I could listen 2 hours without allowing one of my ideas to get to interact with the teaching. So I could actually hear what was actually being said. And most of these modern teachers who never developed the discipline and never had a proper teaching or a proper teacher, they hear the teaching or read something from the teaching, and then they start interacting with it based on their own experience, and then that becomes their teaching. That's what happens. So, and then they pass that on to you. But that teaching hasn't been vetted. And this, once you hear this, then you can go out, you can visit all of, I don't know why anyone would, but I never did. Actually, when I heard this from Swamiji, I never went to another guru, except when a friend of mine would say, what about this, will you come and listen to this, or I'd like to go, invite me or something, then I'd go along, just to please my friend. So there was no reason to, because I understood that, first of all, I wouldn't hear a better teaching. And secondly, I just get irritated because I'd see all of this, the little bits of ignorance that are being passed off as knowledge, and I feel sorry for those people who are swallowing this stuff as if it was knowledge. So I just had to stay away from it because it irritated me. It's just like, how irritated you get when you read the media. You see, huh? I mean, you see this problem happening now in America. It's a big issue, fake news. Huh? The spiritual world is full of fake news. Yeah. Sad to say. Huh? And they don't know it's fake. Like, you know, I'm fighting against the word Trump. But the people who they believe what they believe, irrespective of facts. They're not interested in facts. Their beliefs are more important than the facts to them. Well, that doesn't work here. We're interested in just the facts, ma'am. Remember that old? Oh, you guys are way too young for that. There was a famous old TV program.
Dragnet.
Dragnet. Jack Webb. And he'd come and he'd meet these people, particularly women. They'd come to the door, and he'd say they were investigating a crime, and they'd start blabbing. And then he'd always cut them off. He said, "Just the facts, ma'am." that was a signature line. Just the facts, ma'am. Yeah, we want just the facts. And the facts have all been determined. So the jury's not out on who I am. The jury's not out on the nature of existence. You can read all these scientists till you're blue in the face, and the scientists are all about existence and the creation of the universe and all that sort of thing. And you can keep studying science for the next 5,000 years, and you're still going to find out that science still hasn't figured it out. They don't have the facts, because they're relying on a means of knowledge that's not capable of what? Assessing the fact of existence. Their means of knowledge is basically their senses and inferences drawn from their experience, their experiments. They've replicated the sense organs in the form of these machines and these computers, which allows them to make inferences, allows them to collect data and make inferences on the basis of the data. But not perception and inference, which are available to only two means of knowledge available to human beings. Those are not capable of what? Knowing or understanding who you are. Because the topic, consciousness or existence, is subtler than any means of knowledge that's available to us, except Vedanta. And our means of knowledge is extremely unusual. It's the best word to use. We need this means of knowledge for the topic of who am I in existence, simply because our own equipment, our body and our mind, are just not suitable for investigating this topic. So hearing this teaching depends upon what? Provisional acceptance of what is being said here. In other words, there's no argument. You get to argue in the next stage. Okay, that's called the manana stage, the reflection stage. There you can argue. But in the beginning teaching, you can't argue. Otherwise, you're not going to what? You're not going to have the tools to make an argument, make a proper argument. In the last chapter, I hope we get to it, or maybe we will, maybe we won't. And incidentally, this will be coming out as a book, the teaching that you're hearing here, shortly, within the next month or so. It'll be on the website, so you'll be able to investigate it carefully. You'll be able to understand it. We'll have a video out also, so you can. But this is going to require considerable attention, and not an argument. Okay, like I say, if you want an argument, then call me up and have all your arguments there, and be ready to be defeated. I'm happy to defeat you. And you should be happy to be defeated, to have your ignorance removed. We're not giving you anything that you don't have, okay? We're not promising you anything special here. Well, we are, in a sense. But we're not promising you some kind of big satori or big nirvana, some kind of big transcendental experience or something of the sort. That's not our job. Our job is simply to take away your ignorance. And you should be happy to get rid of it. You won't be happy to get rid of it until you understand what it is and why it's not working for you. But the problem is that, I think ignorance is knowledge. And therefore I operate my life on the basis of what I believe to be knowledge, and what? I find myself suffering. And I can't figure out why I'm suffering because, what? I think that I'm actually operating on the basis of knowledge. Knowledge is what you can't negate. Knowledge is what you can't dismiss. A belief or an opinion or an idea or feeling or all of those things can be dismissed. In other words, can be proven to be incorrect. But knowledge is something you cannot negate. You cannot remove. Did anybody, like fire is always hot. That's knowledge. There was never such a thing as cold fire. That's not possible. Sugar is always sweet. That's knowledge. You can say, that's bitter. If it's bitter, it's not sugar. You can call it sugar, but it won't be sugar. Because sugar is always sweet. If it's bitter and tastes lousy, it's not sugar. And human beings are very, very strange things. They're happy to believe things that are simply not true. And so we're asking you to, one, suspend disbelief long enough to hear it, and then secondly, to investigate, to question this teaching. Please do question it. I want you to question it. Yeah. But you don't try to question it until you've heard it. Then you'll know what kind of questions are appropriate and which ones aren't appropriate. So, anyway. So, welcome. It's very nice to see you all. I'm glad that you could come. I'm kind of excited myself because I really haven't been teaching this. It's called a karika. Karika means it's a particular technical term in Vedanta. Generally it's translated as commentaries. You see, our original literature, our original source literature is called the Upanishads. And these Upanishads are basically cryptic little statements called mantras, like E equals MC squared, for instance. Now everybody knows that E equals MC squared. They know the words E equals MC squared. And some people have memorized the definition, which is energy equals the speed of light squared. It's an equation. So everybody's probably memorized that. But what does that mean? What does that mean? Energy equals the speed of light squared. Because the speed of light. What's the speed of light? You ever seen the speed of light? And have you got can you actually multiply the speed of light times the speed of light? And then equate it with energy? That's going to take a lot. Always shows you in the pictures, Einstein and his row of blackboards. We just saw an Einstein film the other day. Very good. On Netflix, was it Netflix?
Genius.
Huh?
Genius.
Genius, yeah. And there they had a picture of him with his blackboards and stuff. And you know, to understand the E equals mc squared, you had to understand every one of those supporting equations. And you had to understand what each one of those symbols meant. I mean, I don't know what the hell symbols are. They're Greek, I guess. I don't know what the hell they are. Huh? So you had to learn the meaning of each symbol, and then you had to understand the logical sequence. Somebody had to teach you that. And then after you'd heard the whole thing, and it might take you, you know, however long, then you actually could know what it means to say equals mc squared. So these texts are like that. They're like revelations. They're like pure knowledge, just pure capsules of knowledge, like Galileo. What was it? Was the Galileo was the gravity guy?
Yeah.
Newton was the gravity. What was Galileo? Oh, the
sun.
Yeah, sun and that, and then Edison, electricity guy. Those were all knowledge, just. But then look at the development of that knowledge over time. All the people had to come and explain that very carefully, what that means. So, and it became scientific, and then it became useful to us as people. Now we got electricity, you know, we got video cameras. This teaching go out all over the world. That's all because of electricity. So this teaching is only 12 mantras, and actually only 8 of the mantras are the actual teaching, and then the second 4 mantras are meditation to help you understand the teaching once you've heard the teaching. But you can't. I'm not going to teach you the meditation until you've heard the teaching, because you know it's dangerous to try to practice the meditation and you don't know what you're doing there. Then you're just looking for some sort of experience, and that's not what we're talking about at all. So over time, there's been a huge body of literature, of teachings, Vedanta teachings, on this topic of the 3 states of consciousness. Everybody worth his salt in the spiritual world has written commentaries on the Mandukya Upanishad. This is the king of the Upanishads. Mandukya means a frog. This is the frog Upanishad. And why would you call, huh? That's a weird name, huh? I mean, this is like the essence of spiritual life, the essence of existence. This teaching. This is the king of the Upanishads, and it's called the Frog Upanishad. We just discovered here that when we bought the house, this was here. And it was a frog holding up the light of knowledge. It's actually a little lamp. It has a shade to it. And then I was cleaning up the garden here because it was a mess. And the last couple of weeks I've been working outside. And I found a little frog, not a frog, but a replica of a frog in the garden somewhere. And Drake, who lives across the street, he's got a frog, water deal. It puts, and these little frogs spit water out. So obviously there's somehow kind of magic going on here. That's frog. We'll let you figure out what frog means from hearing the Upanishad. There are about 5 or 6 different explanations for the word frog. But what's interesting about it is that, in terms of Vedanta, is that nobody's name is on it. See, nobody puts their name on these teachings. That's a big point. Very important point. This is why you can trust it. Okay? This is why you can trust his teaching, because nobody's putting their name on it. There's no agenda here. When a guy adds his name to something, there's an agenda usually. Almost always. That's the problem with human beings. They've always got an agenda. They're always trying to sell you something or convince you of something. They're always trying to change your mind, get you to believe something. And this is not about that at all. So they just assigned the word frog to Mandukya Upanishad to point out that what this doesn't come from human beings, this was revealed to human beings by consciousness. And enough people had this revelation that it could be accepted as a fact. But this fact needed to be embellished, explained, because it's so potent that it needs to be explained. And so about 1,300 years ago, a great sage named Gaudapada wrote a karika. A karika means an analysis of these verses. And this was about 1,300 years ago. Gaudapada was Shankara's guru's guru. He was a great towering figure in the Vedanta lineage, the Sampradaya, the teaching tradition. And he presented an idea that is very difficult to understand. The actual working of the Upanishad is pretty simple, and we'll work that on you, and you'll get that. But his teaching was called ajativada. I have to just toss in a few Sanskrit terms here for you new people, so that you won't think this is my teaching. You need to understand that. This is not my teaching. I can sell ice to an Eskimo, but I'm not interested in selling you anything. I love this, and I'm teaching Vedanta. Okay, this is not mine. And this guy, he wrote commentaries, about 180 commentaries on this text, and the teaching is called ajativada. Actually, this is what you hear every day in the Advaita world. The Advaita world is the modern non-dual world. We call them neo-non-dualists. It's been around forever. The neo-non-dualists have been around forever. They're not neo. There are people who have never been taught properly, who present non-duality in a dualistic way without understanding they're actually teaching duality when they're teaching non-duality. But most of these guys read this and they understood it intuitively. They understood because they'd had enough spiritual experience to see that actually there is no world here. This is what ajativada means. The word janma means to be born. When you put an A in front of the word ja, it means unborn. Now, that means, and the sound bite they have for it now is what? Nothing ever happened. Maybe you read, those of you Papaji people, if there are any Papaji people here, may have read David Godman's trilogy on Papaji, 3 huge volumes And it's entitled Nothing Ever Happened. Huge thing. And you'll hear that throughout the modern spiritual world. Nothing ever happened. You know, what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, that means this table's not actually here. This person is not actually speaking. This room is not actually existent. There, huh? What? That's the teaching. What's the problem with that teaching? What's the problem? The problem is I see a table here, I hear Ramji blabbing Vedanta, I'm in a room with lights and videos and blah blah blah, and my stomach is rumbling, and my brain is working, and the sun is shining, and you're telling me this isn't here? You're telling me this doesn't exist? Yeah. So in other words, this teaching totally defies experience, doesn't it? It totally defies common sense, logic, and experience. Because I'm experiencing duality, I'm experiencing a world here, I'm living in this world, and this guy's saying it doesn't exist. You got them out there, the Tony Parsons guys and those people. There's a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, his name's Tony Parsons. He's an English guy. Clever fellow. Makes good money off this. He'll get 100 people in a room, and they'll all pay $10, so they make $1,000. He stands there for a couple hours, and he says, they're all sitting and waiting for the teaching. He says, I don't exist. You don't exist. And then he steps back and he's quiet. Gets $1,000 for saying that for 2 hours. Then he continues to talk as if he exists. and nobody knows what the hell he's talking about, but they keep coming because they think, well, that's so absurd, there must be something there. Well, there actually is something there, but he has no, well, first of all, those people are not qualified to hear it, and secondly, he has no way to teach it, because nobody ever taught him what it meant. He just had some kind of intuitive appreciation of the fact that the world is not real. See, because we're saying, you know, there's only one reality here. That's what non-duality means. Non-duality means this is a non-dual existence, and non-dual means there's not two things, right? Duality means there are two things, and non-duality means there's not two things. Now that means what, in terms of what I just told you? The subject and the object, which seem to be very different, are not different at all. What? You mean all along I've been assuming that what I'm experiencing and the me that's experiencing it are two different things. Isn't that right? Isn't that what your life is? If somebody asks you to write your life, write your story, it's always just going to be me and the things that happen to me. And the point of view will always be what? That something happened to me that is different from me, and I'm like trying to figure out what it is. Trying to assimilate the meaning of what's happening to me, right, from the point of view that it's different from me. And Vedanta is saying, hey, that's not the truth. The objects that you're experiencing and the experiencing subject, the awareness or the consciousness, the existent, present subject is non-different. Those two things are non-different. Wow. That's what non-duality means. So you see, we got a big job. I got a big job on my hands, right? Gaudapada's got a big job on his hands. Because he's got to what? Destroy this notion that there's somehow a separation between me and what I'm experiencing. If there's no difference between me and what I'm experiencing, do I have any problems? My life is nothing but a bunch of problems, isn't it? The day I pop out of my womb, I've got problems. And till the day I die, I've got problems. And all of those problems are based upon a simple fact. What? That I think what I'm experiencing and myself are two different things. That's a belief. Duality is a belief. Duality is not a fact. A belief can be removed. A fact cannot be removed. Well, alternative facts. They got, huh? They have fake news and they got alternative facts. How do you like that? Huh? You ever see ignorance like as strong as it is in the public? It's good, actually. It's because the public's becoming aware. This is how existence educates us. So we should be very thankful for what's happening now. Not, oh my God, nuclear war. Now they've got the nuclear war thing. They're beating the drums of nuclear war again. Did you know? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I just read an article last night on the internet. It's way more dangerous than it was in the 80s, in the 70s. It's way more dangerous. You know.
Fear factor.
Huh?
Fear.
Fear, yeah. Yeah. So we've got a big job here, and it's going to be, it's going to take a little bit of thinking on your part. There's logic here, and there's examples here that'll be very helpful. Now, prior to my teaching this text, I taught it recently in Germany, and there was a really good response, and it really stimulated a lot of people. It was very good. There are a lot of young people too who actually really liked it. It's very difficult for young people because most young people are really still wrapped up in their lives. By the time you get a few gray hairs, you're starting to get, Jesus, is this all there is? But before you're like, before you're 40, you still think there's something to get here. You still believe the world is real, and you're still chasing stuff. But after a while you realize, hey, security and pleasure and power and fame and all that stuff, that there's nothing there. So then you're ready for this. But now it seems like even younger people are starting to be able to take this idea in mind. The problem with this is that the reason I've not taught it before is because we have an alternative teaching that's in the source texts. They're called the Upanishads. There are two creation theories, and now that's a strange business, isn't it? Because you say, well, if this is the truth, then why are there two creation theories? Because creation only can happen one way, can't it? Can creation happen two ways or three ways? Or no, it's not possible, is it? Yeah, you have an alternative creation here and another, based on different principles. Huh? What about triality or quadrality or quintality? You got duality, triality, quadrality. These could all be different principles on the basis of which creation could happen. Probably never thought about this. No, creation can only happen one way, because there's only one creation. And there's only one consciousness, and that my experience of myself is what I'm a simple conscious being, and the creation is a simple object that appears to me. Whatever it is, whatever the objects are I happen to be experiencing, all those are just one creation, and the same for everybody. They just appear to be different from one person to another, owing to the difference in equipment that we have. But basically, we all experience everything exactly the same way. And we have science. And science, that's why we're living so well. We live today better than the kings and noblemen did of, 200 years ago, owing to science. And science is based upon the fact that there are just one creation here that runs on a certain basic principles or laws. And we've discovered a number of those laws so we can make our lives work for us. So we got two creation theories in the Vedas. Vedas means Upanishads, which is our source text. And one of them's got to be wrong. And why do they have two then? See? It makes you question the source material. See, most of you don't question the source material, but the brains that have been around forever, they say, well, just a minute, like Gaudapada. Gaudapada, this is 1,300 years ago, and that's not new. The idea he presented was not new at the time. He's just the guy that wrote it down, explained it, and taught it. Then why do they have these two creation theories? Well, because one creation theory is suitable for beginning and intermediate people, and the next creation theory is only suitable for advanced people, for highly qualified people. So the ajativada teaching, well, what? Will negate the cause and effect teaching. We're going to bring the cause and effect teaching up here shortly. We're going to explain. We're going to start you out with the cause and effect, and then we're going to bring the ajativada, the non-origination teaching. Non-origination means nothing's born. So that's why it's set up. Understand? Now you wouldn't have figured that out on your own. First of all, because you don't read Sanskrit. Second, because you're not Sanskrit scholars. Thirdly, because you're not interested in the Upanishads. And fourthly, because this is so subtle that you're not going to work it out. We're too busy worrying about, whether somebody loves us or whether we have enough money to get through the month or whatever. All the petty little everyday shit. So, but these guys, who understood what non-duality meant, had time on their hands. When you crack the code here, or the code is cracked for you, either way, you got lots of time on your hands. You got, the danger is what Trungpa used to call transcendental boredom. You better keep yourself busy because, non-duality is boring as hell. And you still got a mind. So they put their mind to work on this teaching, Vedanta, spiffing it up, buffing it up, explaining the contradictions that appear in the Upanishads. In the Upanishads you have a big problem, another big problem, which relates to this. It's called the knowledge and experience problem. There, it makes it appear as if you can do something to get enlightened. And at the same time, there's a teaching that says you can't do anything to get enlightened. See the contradiction? So, and that's got to all be worked out. The modern spiritual world is basically, you can do something to get enlightened. Even though they say you can't do something to get enlightened, The actual teaching is you must do something, you must experience something that you're not experiencing already. Because they haven't analyzed experience and its relationship to knowledge, or they don't really know what non-duality means. So they present non-duality in an experiential way, which is terribly confusing. Unless you understand, and they're able to interpret experiential language as knowledge. So this is why you need teaching here. So all of this is to get to the point, to the topic, which we can take up after the break.